Today on the Playbook Podcast, Donald Trump is locked in a legal struggle over his efforts to pour troops into Chicago and Portland. It is day six of the government shutdown, and there's no sign of a solution yet. And we're all watching Egypt as the Middle East peace talks unfold there. Hello, I'm Jack Blanchard.
And I'm Dasha Burns. It is Monday, October 6th.
And this is the Playbook Podcast. Good morning, everyone. How are you doing, Dasha? Did you have a nice weekend?
Good morning. Happy Monday. Had a very fall weekend. Went apple picking, pumpkin picking.
My goodness.
Had some cider. It was 80 degrees, but, hello fall.
Is it always this hot in October? I'm used to a sort of grey, freezing October thing going on.
I don't know. It's my first DC fall, and I've been told it's and you know what? It was a really beautiful weekend. But I'm excited to see the color really start to pop here.
I went to a 6-year-old's birthday party on Sunday, so it was just kind of a full sugar rush for 2 hours of people running around screaming. So be thankful you didn't do that yesterday.
Hey, I hear that's what fall is all about.
Okay, they certainly thought so. Let's get on with the important news of the day. Overnight, there was a big court case ongoing over Donald Trump's efforts to militarize yet another American city, and we could see more action on that this morning. For those of you that were following this over the weekend, Donald Trump has been trying and is trying to send troops into Portland, Oregon, where there's been this standoff between a small group of protesters and ICE agents over the last few weeks. And Trump has been trying to deploy the military there, as he did in Los Angeles earlier in the year, as he did in Washington, D.C. this summer. This would be the third American city that he's forced the National Guard upon. It was blocked initially by a judge, a federal judge, late on Saturday night. Trump is trying to circumvent it by sending in National Guard from elsewhere, whilst also fighting that court case at the appeals court.
He's sending a National Guard from California, or trying to, and so is Pete Hegseth sending in National Guard from Texas at Governor Abbott's approval.
Correct. And at the time of recording this, it is unclear how this is going to play out legally. But the big picture, Dasha, is that this feels like an increasingly very important moment to me. You know, when Trump first put the National Guard into Los Angeles, there was an element of sort of theatrics about it. And he had this standoff with Gavin Newsom. Even DC, you can make a case, is different. They have obviously different rules here in DC. It's a federally run city. This now, it's very clear, is something that Donald Trump wants to do in lots of cities and is going to continue to do in lots of American cities, and frankly seems to want to normalize the idea of troops going into American cities if the courts permit him to do so. So it feels like gradually this is taking on a really quite titanic struggle in terms of what's normal in America.
Yeah, that's totally right. And I think it's also such a stark contrast from the first administration, where he did a lot of posturing on this front, and he considered getting the military more active in domestic events, but ultimately didn't go as far as he wanted to at that time. And so I think in this term, he's treating this differently, as so much of what he's doing now is much more escalated from the first time around. And it gets them to talk about two different things in terms of the political ground they want to be standing on, right? One of those issues is crime, where they feel like they're stronger on that issue than Democrats. And the other is immigration, because a lot of this is very tied into ICE raids and protests against those ICE raids. Governors and mayors in Democratic states and cities have been up in arms. Pritzker sounding the alarm on how he feels ICE is handling immigration issues and handling the citizens of Illinois and of Chicago. And of course, Oregon and Portland not happy about the approach from the federal government here either. So politically, the White House feels like they are on firm footing here. However, politically and practically, the images of military increasingly being present and taking action in American cities, we'll have to see how long and in how many places people are comfortable seeing this.
Exactly. It's a real question for the country now. Is America happy for this to be a normal thing that happens in America? Because it obviously has never been before. Stephen Miller was sort of making the case on social media last night in his own very unique, forthright way as to why this is necessary. And so the White House's case is that he says, and rightly says, it was the heart of Donald Trump's election campaign in 2024 to halt the border crisis and to carry out massive deportation. He won the election on that platform. And the White House's case is that since then, he says there's been a non-stop campaign of criminal obstruction, threats, harassment, doxing, physical attacks, even riots against ICE agents. He calls that domestic terrorism, and he says that it's the constitutional duty of the federal government to stop this terrorism, as he puts it, defend the lives and the safety of federal officers and protect the American citizens and the nation. Therefore, basically what he's saying is that people voted for this immigration and border policy. It is now being blocked and thwarted illegally, and therefore it is completely right for the president to do whatever he needs to do, Dasha, to make sure he can deliver his policy in all 50 states. That's kind of the White House point of view. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean that's right. The thing though that I never heard while I was at Trump rallies is that he is going to be deploying the military en masse in American cities. Like that was not a campaign platform, and polling has consistently showed that people don't really love this idea, even if they do agree with his sort of more harsh stance on immigration, and even if they do want these mass deportation operations. The execution is not necessarily how anyone imagined that it would go, and I think that's the case with a lot of the folks that aren't in that hardcore 30 or so% of Trump's red meat base. The ideas sound great, and then when they see the execution, there a lot of folks are like, wait a minute, that maybe not how we imagined things. But the White House really still feels like they are in the right on this, and the president loves the idea of the military as uh, both the symbolic and the practical on the ground tool of the commander in chief. And you saw him on Sunday at this address to the Navy, thousands of sailors in uniform, the sort of full might of the Navy power on display, and the president giving this very Trump rally like address. This was not, a standard speech to the military. This was very much what I would have expected to see on the campaign trail, and the language that he used when talking about his opposition and when talking about Democrats and what he wants to to do in terms of taking revenge and all of that. I mean that it was military commander in chief, very much mixed with the Trumpian rhetoric that we have come to know.
Right. And of course, normally American presidents are not meant to be or traditionally have not politicized the military in any way or made political statements like we need to get rid of the Democrats in front of a big military audience as he did yesterday. And don't forget last week, Dasha, he and Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, called in hundreds of generals for a different event in Virginia. And we've talked about this a fair bit last week, but I do think it's important people keep in mind that Donald Trump, the president of the United States, told all the military leaders of America that we're fighting, quote, the enemy within, and telling generals they need to get used to deploying in cities, and saying that the invasion happening in America is no different than a foreign enemy, but more difficult in many ways because they don't wear uniforms. So, you've got to...
Yeah, and telling them that use cities as training grounds, right, for the military.
So that is the context for this legal battle. Democrats are saying many things very angrily given the context of what's happening. But one of the things that points they're making in rebuttal to the sort of Stephen Miller point is winning elections doesn't mean you can actually break the law. And whatever Stephen Miller says, it's the judges that decide the law, not the White House, right? Or at least the interpretation of the law and the Constitution as we know it.
That's right. And I think that has been the big factor that everyone's been watching is Trump's relationships with the courts and with these judges and ultimately the Supreme Court, if and when they tell him no on some of these key positions that he's trying to stand on.
It's important to say as well, we've talked a lot about the attempts to deploy military into Portland, Oregon this week. Last night, J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, said that hundreds of National Guard are being deployed to Chicago against his will. We'll have.
This is the Texas National Guard, right? That
we think so. It looks like that. Therefore, in tandem today, in split screen, you'll see both of these efforts either playing out in real life, or in the courtroom, or across your social media screen. It's not exactly clear where it's going to go, but it's very clearly an extremely live topic and an extremely important one. And you can expect so much conversation on the airwaves, Dasha, because Democrats are pushing back very hard on this because they feel that they have state rules here and state rights here, and the president is trying to ride roughshod over them.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see if Republicans in any of these states at any point, also take a stand here, or if this becomes another Dem versus Republican issue.
Speaking of Dem versus Republican issues, let's talk about the government shutdown, because while all of that is going on, of course, we are now on to the sixth day of the government shutdown. And do you know what I realized? It's really easy to keep count of how many days it is because it started on the 1st of October. It's the 6th today, which means it's day 6. And the reason I'm saying that is because it feels like, Dasha, we're in for the long haul here. I suspect we're going to be counting this shutdown for quite a few number of days yet to come, because
We just might be.
doesn't
There's
feel
no
like it's
incentive,
moving,
right?
right?
There is like zero incentive for anyone to budge at this point. Everybody thinks that this is good for them politically, so why move? Except for the fact that this makes people think that the government doesn't work because, well, the government's literally not
It's
working.
literally not working. When we said last week when this started, it's hard to be optimistic it'll be over soon. Well, I would say after 5 or 6 days of it, it's even harder to be optimistic. No side looks like they're even in the game of moving on this at the moment.
Mm-mm.
The Democrats need to show their base that they're standing up and fighting. Well, I think that's going to take more than 6 days before that sort of need is satisfied, if you like. And Republicans think they're in the right politically here. Like, they think they're on, they've put forward a very simple bill and they're like, just back it like you always do, guys. And why should we negotiate with you when
And what's really striking is like this is the first shutdown in recent history where there hasn't even been the pretense of working hard to get the government started again. Thinking back to 2018 to 2013, like there were late night sessions. People were going till midnight or past midnight to just show they're burning the midnight oil. Maybe not necessarily getting anywhere, but thinking that the optics of parties coming together and trying to hash it out was a good thing. That's that's not even the case this time around.
Absolutely. And so in the meantime, we have all those hundreds of thousands of federal workers now furloughed, or being ordered to work without pay, and wondering what's going to happen to them. And yeah, it's hard to be positive for those federal workers listening to this, that this is going to be over anytime soon. In terms of pain, what does pain really look like? Maybe in a few weeks when services really start to creak, like in the very long shutdown under Trump's first term. It was in like week 3 or week 4, the airports started to struggle because people weren't turning up for work because they weren't getting paid. Like something like that starts to hit home a lot more, I think, than at the moment. It's quite invisible for a lot of people, I think, who aren't in DC and don't work for the federal government.
Like military members, a lot of them aren't feeling it yet. I think that date is over a week away still when military members stop getting paid. So unless you are like very much the kind of federal worker that is furloughed right now, it might take a beat. But I don't know. It's like not unlikely that we're going to get there, given nobody seems to be willing to budge here. I think actually the one bit of like serious pressure is the fact that the Obamacare tax subsidies, like there is a deadline there, right? Like people are going to start seeing what their premiums are going to be. Some of them are starting to see that now. And even like we previewed here on Playbook some like Tony Fabrizio polling, and Republicans are reaching out to me saying this could be a serious problem politically for the right if we don't do anything about this. Trump and Vance and everyone has been saying we can talk about that after the shutdown. But if this is super drawn out, there is a ticking clock here.
Yeah, and you could see that pressure starting to bear. And I guess that's what Democrats must be hoping is going to happen. But as you say, that's going to take some time, right? That's not going to happen this week, but over time, maybe. For those watching closely, the Senate is back today, and expecting there to be a further vote late this afternoon, this evening, on ending the shutdown.
House is not. Mike Johnson has told members to go ahead and stay in their districts.
Take another week off because there's nothing happening in DC.
Correct.
Where something is happening today is in Egypt, where negotiators from all sides, Dasha, are meeting to discuss what I think we can very reasonably call Donald Trump's peace plan for Gaza. Now, Donald Trump talks a lot about peace and makes some pretty bold claims about things he's going to do and things he has done, and not all of them stack up. this feels like potentially a pretty monumental thing that he's done here, because he's pretty much bullied both sides into getting around the table. And it looks like this time, but it looks like it might just work.
Yeah, it's surprisingly everyone in the Trump administration is being very cautious and not doing the usual Trump thing, which is like shouting victory
Right.
long before there actually is one. Marco Rubio was on the Sunday shows over the weekend saying it's the war is not over yet, but signaling optimism. Look, every expert that I've talked to says this could actually be a real viable thing, and I think everyone is holding their breath right now, trying not to sneeze or do anything that might upset the trajectory, which does seem like it is heading towards a ceasefire, hostage exchange, and just the end of the tragic killings that we've been seeing.
Yeah, let's hope so. Trump said last night on True Social that the talks, he talked it up a bit more than Marco Rubio. You'll be
Yeah, that's
shocked to hear,
true.
Dasha. He said the talks have been very successful. They're proceeding rapidly. The technical teams will meet again Monday, as we know, in Egypt. He says, I'm told that the first phase should be completed this week, and I'm asking everyone to move fast. So that gives you some sense of the timescale they're working to. People say there's still a lot of negotiating to be done, but it's pretty clear that for the first time in a long time, first time in years, Benjamin Netanyahu is actually doing what the American president is telling him to do. And I think that has to be chalked up as a pretty big win for Donald Trump if indeed it follows through.
I think a number of things have collided, including the relationship between Trump and Bibi, the an increasing pressure from the White House after some serious frustration there, and the increasing pressure and alliance from other Arab countries in the region, all being on the same page and all together sort of singing from the same songbook to Netanyahu saying, you're running out of options here. Also saying that to Hamas, essentially, like everyone has gotten to this brink where it's a fork in the road. You go one way or the other, and I think all of the parties that are in favor of peace have painted a pretty bleak picture of where this goes if folks don't sign on to a peace plan.
Before we go, pulling something out from the bottom of the Playbook newsletter, Dasha, a famous science guy is headed to the Capitol today for a campaign. Is Bill Nye part of your childhood and growing up in America?
Yeah, Bill Nye, the science guy. I learned so many things about all the various ways you can explode stuff. Mostly
Great.
is what I remember. But yeah, no, he's become a pretty outspoken advocate in favor of science, of having the U.S. be a leader in science and technology. And today is a big day of action for the organization that he's the CEO of now, the Planetary Society, and they are advocating on behalf of NASA, decrying some of the cuts that the administration is planning for our premier space agency. And so he will be out there trying to make sure that NASA is helping lead the way to get us to Mars and beyond, Jack.
All right. In just a few short minutes, we've taken you to Portland, Oregon, Chicago, Illinois. We've gone to the Middle East. We've been to DC, and now we've gone to Mars and
And now we're
beyond.
going to
And we
Mars.
did it all in less than 20 minutes. Not bad, is it?
Well done, team. Happy Monday.
All right. Dasha, thanks so much for being here. Thanks, everyone, for listening. That's all we got time for. We've got much more news and analysis in today's Playbook newsletter, which you can find at politico.com/playbook. And we'll be back tomorrow. Have a great day.
Have a good day.